So, can you imagine if our whole life was a computer simulation? Yes, just like in the movies. The pleasure of tasting a delicious dish is a response of our neurons. So, touch, sight, smell, and all our senses will be nothing more than thousands of complex calculations of a computer. Does this make sense? Hello everyone, my name is Genesis Mendez, and in this video I am going to talk to you about the simulation hypothesis. Those are contents that we will see. So let's get started. What is the simulation hypothesis? The main idea is that our universe isn't real, but that we live in a computational simulation of which we, as simulators, aren't aware. The hypothesis develops the characteristics of René Descartes' evil cat, but takes further by analogy into a future simulated reality. Well, but is there any indication that this hypothesis could be real? Well, yes. Nothing that will allow us to make a conclusive statement, but enough to take it into account and doubt it. This simulation argument began in 2003 with the publication of a paper by Nick Bostrom. He mentions that if using computers we could go from simulating punk, which was only two pedals and a ball, to games with advanced graphics and greater complexity in only 50 years, and if mankind survived 1,000 years more, very powerful machines could be built, and some of them could be dedicated to simulate their ancestors, that is to say, us. So, if there were thousands of computers simulating thousands of universes, the chances that we are the real reality are very low. It is more likely that we are in a simulated reality. And the fact is that there are certain parameters in reality that seems to be quite convenient constants. In the world of software programming, the programmer defines constants that are necessary for the program to function correctly. Under the desired conditions, the same thing happens in the universe. For example, define a structure constant. This quantifies the strength of the electromagnetic interaction between charged elementary particles, which is known to be equal to 1 in 137. If this constant were slightly different, stars wouldn't produce carbon and there would be no living beings as we know them. Then we wonder, could it be that someone decided that it was a constant? So in that way, the world will exist and we will exist? One of the reasons that had also given rise to this hypothesis was when the scientists discovered the quantum world. It deals with a universe of very small objects. For example, if we put a grain of sand under a very powerful microscope, first you will see the contours of the grain, as if it were a stone. Then you look deeper and see the small details. At that point, the grain may look like a skyscraper. If you look deeper, you see the molecular structure. And if you go even closer, the image is already blurry. But you also notice that you see granules that look just like pixels. Coincidence? One of the points again is that if we were in a simulation, we would need too much power in a machine to be able to simulate it. However, it had been answered by comparing the reality of simulation with the double slit experiment. The idea is that in a dark room, a beam of light is let in through a narrow slit. The light reaches an intermediate wall with two slits. On the other side of this wall is a projection screen or photographic plate. When one of the slides is covered, a single peak appears corresponding to the light coming from the open slit. However, when both slits are open, Instead of forming a superposition image of those obtained with the individual slits open, an interference figure is obtained with dark and bright strips. It seems that the light travels in the form of waves that allow to create the lines. However, if we observe the light in detail before passing through the slit, we see that the photons are only particles and don't have wave quality. So, depending on the observation, we can see one phenom or another. Reality then seems directly connected to our observation. It behaves in this sense as a video game does. While we play GTA or Minecraft, the whole world isn't being rendered, only the part we explore at any given moment. So, we would say, but if we were in a computer simulation, we could find bugs or glitches. Well, the scientist Sylvester Gates, studying equations related to fundamental aspects of the universe, such as supersymmetry, discovered that there were mathematical procedures very similar to the error correction codes used by programmers. Coincidence? Even so, the same scientist doesn't believe that this has been planned, but it has been by evolution. Before the existence of the code, the particles were grouped, and once it appeared, the particles survived. As simple as that. An important contribution comes from Can's theory. He bases his theory on that of Buster. However, the editor brings something relevant to this debate. He considers that if we live in a simulation, the universe would need a source or a processor, and that would be the one that is outside that simulation, and the only real object in the universe, light and also gravity. According to Can, the speed of light could process information in seconds and would have an extension of 3,000 kilometers long, where it will store all the information related to the simulation. The speed of light is a kind of hardware artifact that shows that we live in a simulated universe, he says. This theory will confirm that space is to our universe what numbers are to reality simulated on any computer. What we humans perceive as real is just a subjective projection of some of the variables within the computer program we are in. The projection allows us to experience the sensation that we are living, but in reality it is a game, a movie governed by algorithms. And talking about our consciousness, Can insist that it is an integrated subjective interface between each of us and the rest of the universe. The awareness we have of our experience combines all five senses. That consciousness isn't in the simulation's script. According to Kant, the more accurate explanation is that our consciousness is of use to those outside the simulation, the supposed spectators who are watching the movie of our life. Based on the above, it is most likely that this consciousness is living an experience of its own through ours, like when we feel gravity through a video game character riding a roller coaster. One question we could ask ourselves is, why would a civilization create a simulation like ours? It is possible to believe that in case we humans live in a simulation, it could have been created to see how we behave, in a way to see how a simulated civilization would end up, thus observing whether we would destroy each other or create our own simulation. Looking at it from the player character theory, it could serve as a way for our creators to do things they can't do in real life. It is an argument that makes a lot of sense, since we humans also do the same in video games. If we are inside a game or simulation, chances are that each of us has missions or objectives to accomplish. Our character is related to Eastern mystical traditions and Western religion traditions. Thus, each character will have certain characteristics. In the same way, desires to the sports we do or we don't do. We can also link those goals to the jobs we do. Despite this, it could also be that those who direct us have freedom of choice in deciding what we do next, as is the case in most multiplayer video games. Now, we wonder, what would happen if the hypothesis were proven?
Este podría ser un día trágico para la gente de Nueva York. Podría ser el fin del hombre araña.
By common sense, we would say that this would create chaos, total disaster, if it is proven and the whole world finds out. However, scientists have indicated that if it were proven that the universe is computational, it wouldn't necessarily be intentional. There is not necessarily have to be a programmer who has developed the simulation for some purpose. But it's important to think that even that if our reality were simulated, it is the most real thing that we will get to know. Even if we knew that we are simulated, we couldn't get out of the simulation unless we were in a simulation at all, and our bodies as asymmetrics were outside the simulation waiting for us. But could be that outside the simulation, it's also a simulation inside another simulation inside another simulation, and so on infinitely. But well, this hypothesis is not only a current idea, but it has been an idea that has been in the head of the human being since ancient times. For example, in the Mayan philosophy, which is a Hindu philosophy. Maya originally denoted the magic power with which a god can make human beings believe in what turned out to be an illusion. By extension, it later came to mean the powerful force that creates the cosmic illusion that the phenomenal world is real. There is another interesting aspect to deal with, directly with some metaphysical implications that the hypothesis may have. It opens the door to the possibility of the existence of a spirit, since if you're a program running in this reality, there could be a copy of you on some USB. And whoever controls the simulation could rerun the program, just like a reincarnation. It could be also put you in a different environment, like heaven or hell. And if there is a program, there must be a programmer. Of course, which would mean the existence of a god. Although that doesn't mean that he is an omnipotent or a good god. Perhaps scientists will one day surprise us, but the answer may be less grandiose than we might expect. According to Chalmers, our creator could be just some teenage hacker in the next universe app, whose mother is calling for dinner. Let's hope he doesn't turn off the computer. Finally, it can be said that this hypothesis is as difficult to prove as it is to rule out. Even so, the renowned physicist John Wheeler proposed that everything that happens from the interaction of particles upward, it is in some way computation. I would prefer to believe that we live in reality, this because of the Occam's razor argument, which says that between two hypotheses, the simplest is always the true one. To assume that I believe in the real world, I have to assume the Big Bang, the formation of the solar system, the appearance of life, the evolution of consciousness. But to think that I live in a simulation forces me to assume all of the above plus a civilization that has developed computers capable of creating simulations of the universe. I think that I find easier to believe in the first option. We must not forget what the simulation hypothesis really is. It is the mother of all conspiracy theories.